Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Molly rarely dreamed, only on those nights when she took sleeping pills and slept as if she'd fallen into a deep hole. And that's when the most dreams came. And sometimes they were prophetic. And she wanted so badly to get rid of that gift, to feel death, misfortune, to foresee what would happen. There is an expression, cruel romance, about herself. Molly could say cruel talent because a person does not know his future and is happy with it. But if you do know, you can't prevent it. Molly tried to so occupy the day with pressing matters that there was no time or energy left to look into the future. Not her own, not anyone else's. But sometimes in the dead of night, when her deep sleep overcame her and I made myself known. That morning, she woke up with a sense of impending loss. As she busied herself with non-crafty and domestic chores, she remembered how Nancy had asked her recently, "Why don't you ever tell me about when you were little?" What's there to tell? How Molly lived with her aunt, who was or was not her song mother, until her brothers were 5 years old. And together, Molly went to the train stations. She didn't remember much about it. Vanessa told her. But my friend Wendy and I were getting off the train at the time. November had just begun. The wind is so hot it burns your face. And it was snowing. It's coming down from the sky. You're sitting on a bench in the corner. You haven't even gone into the station. You can't see the wood outside. They told you to wait. And somehow you got free, palms in your sleeves, collar up, no hat, no warm pants. Sitting there like that are obedient children. I asked you, "Little one, who are you with?" And you say, "I'm alone." The station is tiny. The glass is empty. Not a single person. I went in and the cashier who sells tickets. I asked her if you noticed who she was with. "That girl over there." "What kind of girl is she?" "You were sitting so quietly that nobody noticed you but us." I gave the cashier my address for whoever was looking for you. She said, "I'll take you to my place for now. I'll at least give the child some tea and pick up some clothes. She's prickling in the wind." I went out, and I saw Wendy had already bought you a handkerchief. So we went to my basement. It happens to me a lot. I say one little thing, and it comes true. Why did I say you were sick at home? We were all over you at once. We just put both your legs in a basin of hot water and put a mug of tea in your hands. And it's like you're falling asleep. Your temperature was measured at 40. Molly remembered herself from that fever. Not after, but from it. She knew she was dying then. Who really left her at the train station? Undecided, you, the woman with whom they had previously gone on the electric trains asking for food, aunt, told the passengers different stories. Pitifully, wiping away light tears. And Molly kept waiting to see who would give them food. Older women Sertabolny opened their purses, but usually they did not have anything with them. They'd give her candy, cookies. They'd give money to their aunt. But the men, they sometimes shared what they took for themselves. They held out a bun with sausage cutlets, nested between 2 slices of bread. It was only the joy of that meal that Molly remembers. The cutlet was so big, so tasty, she would swallow it, barely joking, like a little dog. She also almost always wanted to sleep. Molly would fall asleep on the floor. At some stage, she would be woken up so early. It was still dark outside, but one must get up and go. When would she get something to eat today? All thoughts, roundel swirled around the feeling of hunger. Why was Molly forgotten at the train station? Our aunt noticed that Molly was sick, and where would she go with a girl who could hardly stand on her feet? That's how Molly grew up with her kind grandmother, Vanessa. But after the death of the old lady, she had to vacate the living space. Found other heirs. The girl packed up overnight, and on the last money went to the city. On the first day, Molly sat in the huge store, completely taken aback by what she saw. The store was like a shining ship with floors of sticks between which people floated up and down on an escalator when their legs refused to walk and their eyes were tired of looking. Molly took a seat in the corner on the couch, and immediately she was offered a job as a cleaner in the same store. Since then, she's changed jobs. selling pies, walking dogs, walking kids to school. For a while, just bumming around. Otherwise with random friends or from basements. Eventually, she got a job as a checkroom attendant at a restaurant and closed the place. Late, a sleepless night, but the day is yours. No one is your boss. No one helps you. Molly rented an apartment on the first floor of a crack house. There were cat songs and cat odors. And yet, when in the lattice of the oval window appeared a kitten so skinny, pale red, as if he did not have enough strength to get a real color. Molly looked at it carefully, picked it up with the palm of her hand. She was washing him in the sink, and fleas oozed out in black streams. For a moment, Molly was afraid he was dead. And then she saw that the exhausted kitten had simply fallen asleep under the warm water, blindly entrusting his life to fate. From then on, it was just the two of them. And coming home in the morning, Molly knew that will fall asleep Grishchenko and Ear, and the cat god, and to the cat songs. Molly had nothing left of her former life. Only as from that childhood serious illness, she had the gift of foresight. It stayed with her. How many times has she noticed? She'll say something in passing, and it comes out like that. Nonsense. Nothing. Sometimes it's just something she accidentally says to an acquaintance. Take care of your wallet today. Don't worry, she'll do it for her daughter. Would you call your mother? And then they told her that the purse was indeed almost stolen. The girl was second on the list of those accepted to the institute, and the mother had a heart attack during the night. Molly was unpleasantly disturbed by this ability of hers, and she became increasingly silent. Molly herself eventually took a job as a caregiver. She needed a place to live, so the board and lodging option seemed very attractive to her. Good fame runs ahead. So since then, the young woman has never been out of work, caring for the sick and the elderly. She did not just do what was required of her, Molly, and sincerely cared for her charges, and at night sat by the bedside and strictly followed all the doctor's orders, read books aloud, and if the sick person had strength, took him for a walk at least on the beam. One of the women Molly cared for was particularly difficult, even for loved ones, caring for a person who can't move himself. It's a real cross to bear. Evelyn also found herself alone. No one would have questioned Molly if her charge had not long alighted on this world. But her caregiver prolonged her life for several years, spoon-fed her favorite foods, made sure the patient always lay on clean linen. And most importantly, the two women, young and old, really became friends. Molly was interested in listening to the old woman's stories about the past, which she herself knew only from books. And Evelyn was touched by the caregiver's attention to her. Even if you woke her up at night, she would not express any displeasure, only alarmed. Are you unwell? What can I do for you? It wasn't until after her death that Molly learned that Evelyn had bequeathed her apartment to her. She couldn't believe it when she saw the will. She was sure that if her ward left, she'd find some distant relatives. But they fly like flies to honey and start dividing the inheritance. But the notary stated that Evelyn has no one left, and the 3-room apartment goes to Molly. After that, the young woman repeatedly heard the remarks of neighbors sitting on the bench at the entrance in the evenings. They spoke softly, but Molly, coming home, heard their every word. You know, she used to say that she hadn't followed that woman for nothing, said one neighbor to another. That's what anyone would do for an apartment downtown. Probably, as Evelyn had left a will, so her nurse had sent her to the next world as soon as possible. That time Molly could not resist, turned around from measuring the talking girl, looked at her snidely and with a challenge, saying, "What are you going to do to me?" The young woman was offended to tears. After all, she, apparently, did not know about the inheritance, but she was sincerely attached to Evelyn because they were both lonely, and the thought that she was considered by others almost a murderer of the old woman was unbearable. It was many years before Molly learned to ignore such insults, to listen to the opinion of only those people whom she respected. However, even then she soon became not to her neighbors, because she met Michael. They met by chance. It was a beautiful May evening when Molly said goodbye to another of her charges. Now she had a place to live, and at the sick she spent the day and went home at night. Passing through the park, the woman suddenly plunged into that spring atmosphere of blossoming and fragrant cherry blossoms. People were enjoying the first really warm day. Children were running and frolicking. Stalls were selling ice cream and cotton candy. People were lining up for the rides. Molly suddenly remembered from her childhood, and giving in to the impulse, she went to the ticket office and bought a ticket for the Ferris wheel. When it was her turn to get into the cabin, the aunt who had lost the tickets put a young man, who also did not have a pair. The turn of the wheel lasted only a few minutes, but it was enough time for Molly and Michael to get to know each other. And once said, then they sat in a small cafe, eating ice cream dusted with chocolate sprinkles. Both of their eyes were shining, as if they realized that the long-awaited meeting, the one you dream of all your life, had finally happened. They married quickly. Michael was an engineer and lived in a factory dormitory, so he moved in with Molly. The first year flew by instantly. Molly herself did not seem to believe that she, who had always been a tumbleweed, a vagabond without a family, without a tribe, now became a real mistress on which the house is kept. And only a premonition, which she in recent years did not let raise its head now, as if quietly judged that this road leads to nowhere and nothing good awaits her Molly there. 2 years later, Nancy was born. Problems in the young family appeared when Molly became pregnant. But at first they seemed insignificant, like clouds on the horizon in the middle of a clear summer day. Molly's situation was not a big deal. No, she wasn't hospitalized. But often she didn't have the energy to do the usual housework. She was irresistibly sleepy, irritated by all the smells. Michael, coming home from work, would find the shelves in the refrigerator empty and the laundry early. In vain he lifted the lids of the pots, hoping to discover, as before, his favorite borscht, stuffed cabbage. "And what have you been doing all day?" he asked his wife Riley. She got out of bed, shot up, and clamping her mouth, rushed to the restroom. Eventually, Michael got into the habit of going to the dumplings after work. He'd come home already full and wouldn't even think about what Molly had eaten. And I was often so bad that she could not go to the store and buy at least bread. When she asked her husband for it, he refused flatly. "I'm tired myself. You stay at home all day long. You need to go out. So make an effort to walk to the bakery." No creature is more resentful than a pregnant woman, Molly swallowed in tears. But she was too proud to argue, and she so wished someone would bring her a hot sweet. T stroked her head and pitied her like a little girl. But Molly's labor went easily, and the next day she could walk down the hospital corridor. She was only worried that when she was taken to the hospital, the money that was at home in the top shelf of her closet was already running out, and Michael's probably sitting hungry. Maybe he'll guess to grab a small amount from a friend. He could take 2 portions in the factory canteen and have enough for lunch and dinner. Her premonitions were justified. In the evening, the neighbors called out her window. "Yours is supposed to be here. Here's the lady waving. You don't have any food there, you hear?" Michael didn't even bother to lower his voice. "You're being fed. Maybe there's some leftovers. We've got a lot of food at home." Molly's cheeks are flushed. She still had a glass of soursop on her nightstand and a bun on top. The hospital afternoon snack was helped out by the neighbors from home, constantly carrying different takedowns. The women quickly collected the handover and lowered it right from the window. They tied a rope to the bag. At the situation in the ward laughed, but Molly felt that her neighbors condemned Michael and rejoiced that their husbands are quite different. Back home, Molly quickly realized that her husband was not at all thrilled with their daughter. Like many young fathers, he wanted an heir son. While Nancy was very young, Michael seemed afraid to touch her. Molly, after many sleepless nights, wandered about like a sleepwalker. She wanted only one thing: to fall asleep for long hours, so that no one would bother her. But the young woman kept thinking that family was the most precious thing she had. So she tried to take care not only of the baby, but also of her husband. And there was not much left for herself. When Nancy grew up a little, her father warmed to her. And now he could be sent for a walk with his daughter from time to time. And after Nancy went to school, it was Michael who attended all the parent-teacher conferences. Molly was glad of that. After all, she hadn't gotten any education herself, so let her husband handle school and business. Now that her daughter spends part of the day in the classroom, Molly got a job as a social worker. The salary is pennies, but it's a familiar job. You can always run home in the middle of the day to do some errands. And the seniority comes with it, sacrificing your own interests all the time. Molly consoled herself with the fact that in the fall there is no career and men do not look admiringly after her. But she gave herself to her family without a trace. A huge shock for her was the evening when Michael made his confession. It would seem that nothing boded ill. Even on the contrary, Molly released early, had time to run to several stores, brought heavy bags, and not just cooked dinner, but also a pie from the bakery. I am exactly the kind of youth skinny. One bone can tempt and eat a couple of pieces. And actually the smell of baking brought Molly back to her childhood, when her grandmother Vanessa took such loving care of her. But Michael didn't pay attention to dinner. He barely spoke hotly and pushed the pie away from him. "Are you feeling all right?" asked Molly. More than her husband answered, and his tone seemed strange to her. "So what's wrong with it?" It seemed delicious. There was resentment in Molly's voice against her will. It was a time of empty store shelves, and it wasn't easy for housewives to feed their families. At times many in lines, running from store to store, and Michael would push back his plate instead of thanking her. "A first-class pub try," Nancy confirmed. Michael takes a deep breath, and as if to make up his mind. "Is that it, girls? I'm leaving you. I'm leaving you the apartment. I'm not sharing it. Where do you want to go?" Nancy asked with interest. But Molly understood everything at once. She was out of breath. She sank down on the chair, hoping that now she could breathe and that she would feel a little better. That her gift, that occasionally still awoke, let her know it was useless to explain, to humiliate, to persuade. And before her eyes was a picture of a young, tall girl, perfectly built with a frankly embarrassed look. "Is her name Jenna?" Molly asked herself, not hearing her own voice. "How do you know?" Michael did not take his eyes off her face. "Did your girlfriends tell you what to do, or did they tell you?" Molly just waved her hand. "I don't have girlfriends, just old ladies in charge." "Well, you've made up your mind, so leave. Will you pack your own things, or shall I help you?" I guess deep down Michael was embarrassed by the situation. He packed Oscar. Always so neat, now he was just throwing things into his bag, just to get it over with as quickly as possible. Nancy peppered her father with questions, but Molly told her daughter not to bother Daddy or he'd forget something. But then she added, addressing her now ex-husband, "It's good that you're leaving in front of your daughter. Otherwise Inca would be tormented, waiting for you on the window would hang, looking out. And now you'll explain to her that you won't come back." "Why you?" Nancy shouted. Michael squatted down in front of his daughter. "I'm just going to live somewhere else, and you're going to come and visit me. You've fallen out of love with us." "Yes." Nancy's lips quivered. She couldn't stop herself from crying. "You found someone else." Molly thought bitterly that at 10 years old, the girl had gotten it right. Growing up, what's the matter? How can I not love you? Michael emphasized the word you. "I'll come to your house on the weekends, or you'll come to mine." "No, you traitor. I don't want you to come over. I won't let you." Nancy pulled her arm out, and she whirled into the other room to cry. Molly saw that Michael was confused and upset. What did he expect? A grown woman can still understand and accept the situation, although God knows she did not expect such a blow. But a girl whose father is leaving her, maybe Michael expected Molly to start comforting him. Say some platitudes like, "Wait, give her time, you'll make up." Instead, Molly said, "And Lizio won't stay with you for long. She'll replace you with someone else." "That's you talking out of jealousy to spite me." Michael picked up the bag, and moments later the front door slammed with such force that the plaster sprinkled. Molly didn't find the strength to get up for some time yet. No, she wasn't jealous. She just knew it would happen. Looking ahead, her prediction had come true. Jenna worked as a hairdresser. Years later, when beauty services began to evolve, she had her own salon, Shub Garanja. By the time Michael and Jenna went to her, she already had a son from her first marriage, then had a daughter in common with Michael. The young beauty was not going to share her husband with anyone else, and in vain Michael promised, and not that will often see her. Jenna not only did not let him to the former family, but also took him away from home and friends. It was not until a year later on Nancy's birthday that Michael arrived at his daughter's house. With a gift of a large bag of bunny, he went up to the apartment. Jenna was waiting in the car waiting for him. She forbade Michael to visit and ran to her room, locked the door, and flatly refused to talk to her father or take the present from him. Michael went downstairs, and the speaker's hair took from the open window and fell at his feet. "It's all clear," stated Jenna. "There is nothing more for you to do here." From then on, relations between the families ceased definitively. And even when Nancy was seriously ill, Molly did not ask her ex-husband for help, did not ask for money for medicine. As the years went by, Jenna didn't seem to grow old. True, we didn't invest out of ourselves to the fullest, as they say now. The difference between the spouses became more and more apparent, and the day came when the woman found a better match and left Michael. Without a backward glance, Jenna's son was on his feet by then, and she took her daughter with her. Molly knew in advance that this was what would happen, that she was leaving her. Her husband was not at all into a happy, cloudless life, but it was useless to object to him at that moment when he hurriedly tightened the zipper on the travel bags. From that moment on, Molly lived like a mechanical doll. She was still doing all the household chores for her daughter, but she had become so silent that she did not speak to anyone. When we turned to her, and she would only answer us. Molly had not been beautiful before, but she had a pleasant face, and she had a good disposition, and now it was like she was attracted. You matched the colors in her hair, silver and gray. Suddenly, Molly began to fear for her health. In her case, that Nancy would send her to boarding school, as once Vanessa's father would not take her, and his new wife was not needed. It was hardly the first time Molly had gone to the doctor to complain about something. But I didn't know what I felt bad about. "That's all," she said. The elderly doctor measured her blood pressure, listened to her heart, and then looked at her patient's trembling fingers for tears, every now and then at the eye's side, and wrote a prescription. "Here at least 10 days take a pill and go to sleep. Wake up, and then take another pill and go back to bed. Otherwise you'll drag yourself to a mental institution," she said, handing Molly a piece of paper. "Thank you," Molly said. Once again, I held back tears, lightly touched her hand and the doctor's. "Will your father be all right? He'll live." "What? Why do you say that? How do you know?" The doctor shuddered. Her father, a profound old man, was actually undergoing a checkup right now. The doctors suspected cancer, but it'll be a few days before the diagnosis is confirmed. The old man would be released home. And now Molly just shrugged her shoulders. "I just know you're worried about him." "Don't be. I know everything about other people. I can't see into my own future." Meanwhile, Nancy was entering a difficult age of transition. And if earlier she loved and pitied her mother and would not hesitate to rush to her defense, now the girl was a teenager. Far more, she was interested in the art company. Molly tried, as before, to talk to her daughter in confidence. "Are you interested in the boys there? And what in our crypt to sit?" Nancy snapped at her. "You won't tell me to look through the walls in one word. But why do you have your own room? Can you do your homework, listen to music, invite some girls over?" Nancy poked as if she'd heard something stupid. That's what the mother said to Sophia cruelly, and Molly flinched at both the tone and the word mother. Before, to her daughter, she had been mommy and mom. "Come on, mother, you're not going to bother me." Later, thinking back on those years, when Anne learned in high school, Molly thought there had never been a harder pairing in her life. She made arrangements with the girls' class teacher and called her every morning to see if Nancy had shown up for class today or was she skipping again. But the worst of it all began in the evenings. Molly tried to convince her daughter to come home at least by 10 o'clock. "You're not doing your homework." In the voice of the mother involuntarily sounded similar intonations. "And if you come at 0 o'clock, you are not in a hurry." Now teachers still feel sorry for you. They give you C's. But when they see you don't want to lift a finger, only in lessons they'll just kick you out 9th grade. You'll finish and goodbye. So what? You yourself studied 3 grades and you've been changing diapers for old people all your life. Why didn't you become a professor yourself? "Do you know what my life was like?" said Molly. "If I had grown up with parents, I would have studied. My life would have been very different." When you have children of your own, you will realize that every mother wants her daughter to live a better life than she did. Calm down. I'm better off than you. Obviously better. And reminded me of a free life, the opportunity to hang out with the guys in the entrances and yards until night, drinking beer and comprehending the first joys of love. When my daughter slammed the door again, Molly sat with her hands over her face for a long time, so lonely she had never felt before. If she didn't come home late at night, her mother would go looking for her. Molly knew what to eat: poorly lit yards, stray dogs, dubious company in back alleys. She bought a flashlight to illuminate to the detriment of the length of asphalt under her feet, not to trip and fall. And already in winter in the ice, Molly awkwardly rattled and broke her right wrist. For several weeks, any work was given to her with great difficulty. The damaged hand was in sharp pain. But Nancy never lifted a finger to help her mother in the meantime. Oh, these winters! How many times Molly came home. With her and my anxiety for the night she never managed to find, and cried quietly at the radiator animate from the frost on her fingers. Tears flowed with pain and hopelessness. The future turned out to be absolutely hopeless, and even the clairvoyant, who more than once helped the woman out, was now silent, and she did not get any hints from him. So now, when Nancy returned, which could be at 2 or at 3 o'clock, Molly only gasped with unbearable relief. "The daughter's alive, so we can go to bed." Once again looking for and at Molly noticed a woman about the same age as herself. Her face looked familiar. The woman, too, was circling the yard, peering into the shadows. Suddenly, Molly called out to her, "Are you looking for someone, daughter?" Immediately, she responded and came closer. "Have not seen a girl with blonde hair in a red jacket, and mine in blue," said Molly, "and her cap is so blue with Ethan." The women got to talking and quickly remembered each other. A few years ago, when their daughters had not yet gone to school, they were studying at a developmental center at the Palace of Culture. There they taught the kids to read and write, draw and mold plasticine. Other Emily at that time became friends, but later their paths diverged. The girls went to different schools. Molly complained to Camille about the company Nancy contacted and found out that Emily was also disappearing with these guys. All above no more, Camille said bitterly. "I'm the only one raising her. You can't imagine. How hard can it be? I can, and I'm working 2 jobs." Camille must have wanted to talk. "I wanted Emily, and I had enough money to go to music school. My daughter went to the piano. I bought her a nice dress for concerts, only we chose velvet ones with a lace collar. We went to the sea every year, so this is still happiness." Molly said bitterly, "Even if I work around the clock, I will not earn so much. The sea would know at least what color it is. I thought he had been recruited to go to the north on shifts. They'd pay well there, but there'd be no one to leave me with. No one. I have no relatives." Talking women stopped around, trying to keep warm. And finally Camille suggested, "Let's go to my place. I live nearby. We'll have tea in this house. The girls will probably show up again at 1 o'clock in the morning. God knows where they're sitting now, but we won't let them go." Molly, for the first time in a long time, I felt a rush of warmth. Now she had a friend who could understand her better than anyone else. someone to complain to and cry to. Camille's apartment was on the second floor. She and her daughter lived more lavishly than Molly and Nancy. Camille caught the gaze of her new acquaintance, Molly, involuntarily admiring the kitchen. What a beautiful set, and how cozy. I work as a simple cook, Camille explained. I don't have to spend much on groceries, so I save up. What's left over from your earnings? I spend the cash on the apartment. I like the house to be nice. The woman put cheese, sausage, and butter from the fridge on the fire. She started making sandwiches. All her movements were quick and precise, and Molly couldn't help but admire it. Everything is already arranged on plates and looks like in a restaurant. The thick smell of good coffee wafted through the kitchen. Molly was quick to agree, and for the first time in years, she too was drawn to honesty. So I told him okay. I was so scared. I mean, if something happened to me, who would want the girl? I thought I'd put her on her feet. She'd get married, and I'd live with her and my grandchildren. You're a little early to be an old woman. Maybe you'll get married, and you won't have to warm yourself at someone else's hearth. It seemed so fantastic and ridiculous to Molly that she could still fall in love and bring some man into the house that she could not stand it, and laughed. Camille, what are you saying? What men? By this time, they'd already switched to you. I see you've already given up on yourself. Where's Nancy's father now? Camille squinted. Molly didn't hide it. He's living in some barbershop. And yours? I don't have anyone. I'm from a large family. You know, my eldest daughter. We lived in a village near the city. I knew I had to help my parents raise the younger ones. After school, I went to culinary school. I got a dormitory and a scholarship. For the summer, I arranged pioneer camps, kitchen worker. There, the food was always left for the children. They'd give them pea porridge and a cutlet. Nobody eats peas. I used to take the electric train home. Every time I carried heavy bags. My father raised pigs. Then I got a job in the factory canteen. I still managed to get an apartment. All the time, I didn't care about myself or my personal life. And in the end, I decided to fuck it. I'll go to the sea for a vacation. Maybe I'll have an affair with someone else. And Molly, I couldn't take it. And so it was. A love child. He was a military man on vacation in a sanatorium. I knew he had a wife and kids at home. Maybe it's medieval, but my mom instilled in me that you can't build happiness on someone else's misfortune. So I didn't even try to break up the family. I left the South before he did, and in the spring I gave birth. Camille thought for a moment, looking past Molly. She seemed to remember those distant days when there was a warm blue sea in her life. Bouquets of southern flowers, champagne under the starry sky, with large stars, and the love of her life. A short time of absolute happiness that never happened again. At that time, the knob on the door twitched, and Camille hurriedly jumped up. Thank you, God, I forgot the key again. Molly badly remembered what Emily had looked like as a child, and now she watched the blonde girl of small stature throw off her boots. Nancy was with you, she asked. Nancy went home too. Emily did not hang up, but rather tossed her jacket on the coat rack. Mother had something to eat. Molly thought that all girls are the same at this age. They say they smell like cigarettes. God, if only they'd wise up over the years. She was in a hurry to get home herself. And so Molly's friend, Mrs. Molly, got a little easier since then. The women exchanged phone numbers. At first, they called each other for advice and to complain if their girls did something wrong again. Then there wasn't a night that went by that Molly and Camille didn't talk. Even just talking about nothing. Supported them, helped them to shake off the heavy burden of the day's cares. And of course, the women were always ready to help one another. Come to me, said Camille Molly, when she was days away from a paycheck and the refrigerator was almost empty. Camille would feed her friend a delicious dinner. She always gave her something to take home. It helped keep her going until she got her paycheck. Molly, on the other hand, would read her friends' cards. And the readings were always good. You'll have it all, won't you? Molly assured her. And money. and family happiness. Look at all the diamonds and hearts falling out. I wouldn't lie if I saw something bad. I'd rather keep quiet, but I wouldn't lie. And about a year later, Miranda moved into the same building as Camille in the same entrance. She worked as a doctor in a polyclinic and had recently divorced her husband. Sociable Camille quickly got acquainted with the new neighbor. Miranda became the third in their company. She was not pretty, but it was not noticed immediately, and only if it was possible to catch Miranda without makeup, and at other times well-dressed, skillfully painted. She looked quite attractive, confident woman, and no one even guessed that her heart was broken. Once Miranda married a man much older than herself, a medical school teacher. She didn't just fall in love with him, she completely lost her head. Benjamin was flattered by such admiration for the student. He saw that Miranda was ready to devote her whole life to him. They got married. They bought a nice cooperative apartment. Miranda dreamed of children, but they never had any. But Benjamin was steadily climbing the ladder. He defended his doctoral dissertation. Miranda really created a cult following for him. She worked at the clinic and then did housework until late at night, so that Benjamin, God forbid, did not experience any inconvenience. She tried to cook for her husband. She did all the most delicious things herself at home renovation. The lion's share of his wife's salary spent on him, the same got through acquaintances expensive fashionable things and kept them in immaculate order. Coming from work, Benjamin only rested. But even such a life did not suit him in the end. He had an affair with a young student and announced to Miranda that he was divorcing her. I almost went crazy then, admitted Benjamin friend. For me, divorce from Benjamin meant the end of the world and the ground from under my feet. I don't remember how I worked in those days. You know what shook me up? That my health collapsed. My colleagues assumed it was cancer. While I was being examined, my whole life flashed before my eyes. I saw some hard cases in the hospital. And I myself, thank God, the diagnosis was not confirmed. But after that, it was like a cutoff. I stopped worrying. I realized that I should appreciate the fact that I am alive on my feet and I have a piece of life. So why let it go to waste? Gradually, the three women became friends, so that they began to consider each other almost like sisters. First of all, it was a moral support. To sit together in the kitchen, drink coffee and cry, but not traveling daughters. To complain about the injustice of the bosses, to exchange recipes. Is it much to make sadness recede and the world bloom with new colors? Besides, they were just useful to each other when they were sick to death of being stuck at the stove. Girlfriends could always drop by Camille's and try something delicious, unusual, cooked like the best restaurant. The grocery stores were just getting better. But for Camille, cooking wasn't just a profession, it was a vocation. God, what am I doing? Already Miranda was left reaching for her plate. I'm eating my fourth cheburek. I can't fit into any dress in the summer. Plus it's bad for your liver, your metabolism, everything, writes the know-it-all. Camille sewed her friend's hair as if she were a little girl. And I make the dough myself from country eggs. Yes, select flour, nothing but good from my pierogi, and cheburek will not be. Why are you afraid of your figure? Men, as you know, are not dogs. They don't throw themselves on bones. If the friends, in turn, got sick, Miranda treated them. They forgot how they used to stand in line at the clinic for the coveted coupon. Miranda came to the sick every day, took their blood pressure, and gave them shots. Besides, she was the most well-off of the three. And seeing how Molly beats, I tried to make her on occasion, and without occasion, and not some gifts cosmetics good will bring, then collect a whole package of almost new things. I've been going through my closet, and I'm not going to wear it anymore. Maybe this will work for you. Molly tried to do something to thank her friends. A few times a year, she helped them with the house cleaning. She took on the hardest jobs, and of course, read cards for the women and predicted Kelly's future on the palm of her hand. She didn't turn to her own. I just tried to pick the kindest words and the brightest predictions. She really wanted her girls to be happy. Meanwhile, the other Kellys had graduated from high school, Graduation for all schools was on the same day. By this time, she seemed to have taken on a mindset. For the last year, she had been spending less and less time out of yard company. You could say she'd completely withdrawn from it. She started going to a tutor and passed her final exams very well. With such grades, was not ashamed to enter the institute. She was rewarded with a beautiful dress from the mother of an acquaintance who brought it from Paris. Miranda gave her gold earrings. Camille's showing in her daughter was her whole life. She had every opportunity told her friends in parallel, so wanted to send her somewhere to rest, she said. After all, the girl was tormented. She spent days and nights with her books. But Kelly said, "No, Mom, when I see myself on the acceptance list, then I can relax. Until then, I can't do that." She's decided to go to Polytechnic after all. It won't be too hard for a girl. All that drafting math was clarifying. Miranda Lenina says that before, in Soviet times, to be an engineer was considered not prestigious and paid little. And now you can get a very good job, and part-time students and control work to do. "Lucky you, Camille," Molly said. "And your daughter is a clever girl, and you have not in vain so many years. You have tried so hard to raise her. I have girls. I don't know what's gonna happen." She started being rude about the prom dress. She said, "You can't buy me anything nice anyway." Class teacher, they had a strict, all the time watched that the girls went to school without makeup and jewelry. No pants to wear, my God. And now the name wants to piss her off. He's gonna show up to the party in jeans and blonde hair. And the worst part is, she's got all C's. She can't get into college with them. She doesn't want to go. "Maybe I should talk to her," Miranda suggested. Molly just shook her head. She knew that Nancy had a completely different value system. And Miranda was just an ordinary doctor, no authority to her. If her friend had been a millionaire and traveled the world, then Nancy might have listened to her advice. Molly didn't even want to go to the prom. She envisioned among the girls dressed up like butterflies in airy dresses, rumpled and shabby in jeans. Besides, it would be very difficult for the teachers to say kind words about her daughter. The girl was disliked for her defiant behavior. Molly decided to be a little late, to come not to the solemn part, when they will award certificates, and later when the feast begins. But to her great surprise, she didn't find her daughter. "And left," said one of her former classmates, where Molly could not stand it. The girls looked at each other. "Well, with her friend," said the same Cindy. "She got her diploma, said she had nothing else to do. Then he picked her up and took her away." "And you didn't know about him?" Molly just shook her head. "I see. Well, let her tell you about him." "We don't want any of that," Cindy said. Nancy didn't come home until the next day, when everything had changed. But seeing that the girl's mood was good, and Molly decided to refrain from reproaches and kind words, she tried to find out. "I'm sleepy, tired. Oh my gosh." As Nancy cried, "Take off your clothes. What are you going to do next?" Molly asked. "She's sitting on the edge of the bed with her daughter." "I'm going on a course." The mother was not mistaken. The daughter spoke in a remarkably friendly manner. "Taking a little more time off from exams. Then I'll enroll in a course, work with the secretary, and then we'll see. Now get off my back, Mom. I'm going to get some sleep." Molly walked out of the room, pretending to shut the door behind her. Well, she sighed to herself. At least let it be that way. A clean job in the warmth. At least they'll pay her something. And then maybe she'll get wise to Emily's real profession. And indeed, life seemed to be getting better. And she looked satisfied with the courses. Did not take up much of her time. The summer flew by quickly. Kelly became a student. Her mother invited her friends over for tea and cake. But Molly had something to brag about this time and got a job in a firm. She said, "Salary's 3 times what I get." Well, obviously, social workers are always the lowest paid. But still, Inca was very lucky. For a girl to have that kind of income to begin with, it's very respectable. "Lucky," agreed Camille. "Usually it's a job that comes with a lot of favors." "Didn't you ask who put your Inca there?" "Why do you say that?" Miranda went down on her friend. Now it is required that the employee is young and good-looking. Camille only looked at her, Miranda Volkova. Molly looked from one friend to another. She too began to have doubts, and after a while she still learned about her daughter that the employment did not do without the support of one person. It was, as others had said, a classmate of Nancy's. William was 15 years older than her daughter. It was clear that he had taken a fancy to the young, pretty girl, and as much clearly, this relationship would not continue. The chief had a family. William's wife owned a cosmetic clinic. His son was growing up. The businessman's family life suited him perfectly, and he wasn't going to divorce. Another thing, why not make a little variety, and him life did not spoil him with gifts. And now she was just dizzy. New clothes, out-of-town restaurants, an attractive lover who wooed her so beautifully. Molly was frightened at first. What have you done? Our city is big, but it's not that big. Sooner or later someone will tell his wife. She'll show up at the firm and get in your hair. What are you talking about? That's how they acted when you were young. Now I'm sure the wife has a lover. Everyone lives their own life. Her expression became dreamy and Molly shook her head. She could see that outwardly her daughter had changed for the better. Gone were the boyish grip, the ripped jeans, and no longer smelling of cigarettes. The girl had become more feminine, but foolishly obviously hoped that her lover would leave his ex-wife for bed, or she herself would leave him for another, and then she could marry him. But Molly realized that there was very little chance of that, and it was not to be seen soon. Just so long as this young womanizer didn't break her daughter's heart. Everyone lives like that now, Camille told her friend. Kelly. She moved in with a boy from me too. They're renting an apartment. Maybe they'll get married, maybe not. We'll see. Nancy. Of course, we'll have to find someone else. This William and his wife are too well-to-do people. His son is growing up. He won't leave his wife for this Inca. Well, that's what I think. Molly nodded sorrowfully. There's no telling how long the relationship would have lasted, but life had its own way of doing things. One day, the mother found her daughter in tears. It seemed that Nancy was once again a little girl in need of care. After persistent questioning, the girl admitted that she was pregnant. Not without getting rid of the baby, or there might be no children at all afterwards. And in any case, it's my grandson or granddaughter. Don't cry, you mustn't get upset. We'll think of something. Molly did what she thought was the only right thing to do. She decided to talk to William herself, and she's probably embarrassed or afraid, but she has to make a decision. And if that whip won't marry her, at least let him help her. Liam's not the only one who carries everything on her shoulders, and she can't bear to work and look after a baby. She's not used to hard labor. Molly managed to find out where William lived. She had been on duty nearby for several days, hoping to catch him when he was alone. Finally, she was lucky. I need to talk to you, she said, approaching him. The man raised his eyebrows in surprise, confused and interrupting Molly's words, explained that she, Nancy's mother, said she did not condone her daughter's behavior. The girl should have realized that taking a husband away from his wife and father, from his son, that is the very last thing. But that's not going to happen. The William family will not break up. What do we do now? And not if she's pregnant. You're supposed to be doing something to help. And you also went against your conscience with the girl, went out, cheated on your wife. Molly herself felt how pathetic she looked. She could not find words that would sound weighty and convincing. The man was silent, though. Molly felt that he had already made an assessment of her. A thin woman far from being young in a cheap jacket and official boots was from the same category of people with whom the master of his life rarely had to communicate. He cleaner in his firm paid more than Molly earned. If a miracle had happened and he'd actually fallen in love with Nancy, maybe he would have spoken to her mother more respectfully. But that wasn't the case, and he only frowned unhappily. We're adults now. Let us handle this ourselves, he said. Just got in the car. Molly realized that the conversation wasn't going to continue, but she was wrong. There That particular day came home early. The door opened as abruptly as if her daughter had kicked at it with all her might. Kelly walked to her room, pulled a bag out of her closet, and began throwing things into it along with Christmas trees. Molly covered her face with her hands. She was scared too. She could feel the rage raging inside her daughter. Years ago, her husband had also packed up his things when he left for another woman. But then she had a mother, now she had a daughter. She had traded her mother for her lover. Nancy had packed in 5 minutes. Stopping beside her mother, she shook her finger near her face for a few minutes with frenzy, sometimes not even immediately able to speak. "So you'll never come into my life again." The door slammed so hard that the walls shuddered. A couple days later, frightened by the fact that Molly is not seen in the yard, and to phone calls, she does not answer. A woman's friends came running to the woman's house. Molly was lying in her room. She was in the very robe she had met Nancy in. The woman was not looking at one point, and a frightened Camille wanted to call an ambulance. "Wait, you forget I'm a doctor myself," stopped Miranda. "Now what will the paramedic do when he arrives? Either sleeping pills or they'll suggest we go to the loony bin." "But you can't leave her like this," Camille said, rubbing her friend's icy hands with her warm fingers. "No one's saying we can leave Molly like this now. Tell you what, honey, I'll stay with her. And you go trot back to your place and get some food. Or whatever cognac you got in the stockpile. Anything will do." "Got it," whispered Camille. Half an hour later, the friends, almost by force, sat Molly at the table. They poured cognac. They made the woman drink and then eat a little. There came a moment when Molly seemed to let go. She cried, clinging to her shoulder. Miranda, and she threw the edge of her large similar shawl over her shoulders and began to sway quietly, like a baby bicycle. "Everything will work out. The main thing is that everyone is alive, and the rest will sort itself out. That's what I'm telling you." Months went by in a roundabout way through people I knew. Molly found out she was living in a rented apartment and didn't seem to be poor. Strangely enough, the woman was relieved after that. Not in the sense that she wasn't bothered anymore, and it was mutual. It was just that Molly, maybe for the first time in her entire life, was able to relax. For the first time, she was only responsible for herself now, in charge of her own free time. She, taking her time, felt a strange pleasure. She had cleaned the house. No more throwing things around and leaving the sink full of dirty dishes. Now the house would be clean and fresh. Molly liked to keep the window open. You don't have to worry about dinner. She came home from work, took pity on a couple of potatoes, made tea, and had enough. You can lie down with a book and not think that you owe someone something. I've never experienced such freedom except in my distant childhood. Molly was just getting used to her new life, getting the hang of it. Then one evening the bell rang. A woman went to open the door. I was amazed to see on the doorstep Nancy in an unfamiliar jacket lost weight. Her daughter had matured a few years in that short time. But Molly's eyes were fixed on the baby in the pink blanket in Nancy's arms. "What's wrong?" Molly shrieked involuntarily. The only thing that came to her mind at that moment was her daughter had been kicked out. She had nowhere to go with her newborn baby girl. And she had come home. But where's the stuff? Maybe left downstairs. In the car, we should help fetch it. She looked less like a happy young woman who had come to visit her mother. "Come on, get undressed." Molly's daughter was stunned. No, I'll just be a minute." In the voice of Nancy was not that tenderness, not even some warm notes, showing that she came to a loved one. "Why a minute? What's the matter?" Molly inquired hurriedly. "Here you go. That's my daughter. Her name is Lisa. Here you go. I'll just have to take this for now." She quickly went to her room, started putting the rest of her things in the bag. "You're leaving again," Molly read to her granddaughter. It was as if her hands remembered how to do it on their own. Nancy nodded, focused on not forgetting anything. Finally, the packing was done. I left my bag there in the hallway. "Lisa has the formula. A couple of jars I brought. Read it, It says instructions on how to prepare it. That's it. I'm leaving, where the mother was going, and it's only now that she's starting to get it. What's going on? Nancy smiled a strange smile. Why did you ask me so much not to have an abortion? You said you'd help me raise her. But here's Lisa. You go right ahead. But how can you leave her so little? Where are you going? That's something I don't have to tell you. Yes, sometimes a woman's a mother, and sometimes she's done rhyming. But I must have raised the latter, so I didn't argue. You did. So now we're paying the price. Left alone, I was no longer alone with Lisa. Molly grabbed the phone. Camille, get Luda and get over here. Camille's voice is still on the phone. Digging up the diapers, Molly forgot about everything in the world. She barely had time to feed the baby when her worried friends rushed in. From such a surprise and much-seen women for a while-lost speech, Lisa sang sweetly and fell asleep on the couch. They sat there in silence, but it didn't last long. A doctor in our polyclinic a year ago, my daughter gave birth in a whisper, and in order not to wake up the baby, began Miranda. And what didn't Molly understand? She decided that her friend wanted to tell her a similar story, to convince her that everything is not so terrible. But Miranda had other things on her mind. A year ago, recently, she'd asked if anyone needed baby clothes. Her granddaughter from the village has grown up. She'll give away a stroller for free. You can get a crib offhand. It's cheap. Molly, don't even think about it. I'll buy it. Molly had tears in her eyes. She knew they'd all stand up for their girlfriends, but to help out at a time like this, it moved her. Your Kelly certainly doesn't see it that way, she told Camille. The girl's no angel either. It's only lately that she's taken to it. And I'm afraid to jinx it. Camille looked at the little girl, and involuntarily a gentle smile appeared on her face. So, Lisa, she's baptized. What are you talking about? I just found out she existed half an hour ago. I don't even know when my granddaughter's birthday is. I'm gonna call Kelly today to be my daughter's godmother. You and me, we're the kind of people who need two moms, a primary mom and a backup mom. And you're gonna have to get the girl's papers from your son. If you're raising Lisa, you can't do without them. Birth certificate and stuff like that. I wonder where she's thinking of going. I know, girls, you think it's all right for me to have babies plant these in my old age. Well, old age is canceled. Camille took a deep breath. She was about to take on a tough job right now. And up came the flyer. Where are you going? Molly became agitated. What did you say the mixture was? Give here a jar now, we will bring everything. Half an hour later, the friends returned. This is for the first time. Camille was unloading heavy bags. I didn't bring any. I've only got tapes since perestroika times. We can save money. We'll open it ourselves. Another neighbor shared her meters. Christina, we'll order next week. Kelly promised to come. Miranda laid out bottles, jars, boxes, food, and everything else on the table. The baby needed. Molly was even breathing easier. She realized that together they could handle anything. In the week that had passed since she'd been here, she had time to get used to the girl, and as it turned out, as it was now often said, the gift version of a baby. She rarely cried, and only if she was hungry or needed to change Kelly. Maybe she was born so quiet. Maybe Nancy had trained her to be that way. She didn't seem to expect to be held, and her eyes seemed grown up and sad. You can't help it, not having lived on a child for her own mother. I guess the girl had some kind of instinct to realize that, but for Molly, she became a light in the window, and her friends grew attached to Lisa as if she were her own. If the grandmother needed to go somewhere, she arranged Christina or Camille to look after the girl. They say only other people's children grow up fast, but Lisa and Molly were so fond of each other that the years really did fly by. Nancy didn't let on. Maybe before Molly would have agonized over it, but now she didn't care about the naughty girl. She had given all her love to Lisa, her own daughter. She wasn't needed. The girl studied. Well, C's were rare for her. At parent-teacher conferences, the class teacher always talked about Lisa. Kind words for Molly. I thought that God rewarded her with such a granddaughter and for all the hard things she had to endure in life. Lisa was just finishing 11th grade when Nancy called. Molly didn't even recognize her voice on the phone. They sounded like they barely knew each other. Nancy said she would stop by soon. Molly wanted to ask why, but her daughter had already hung up. She had to prepare Lisa, who was used to thinking that her grandmother was her only family. That night, Molly came to the girl when she had already gone to bed, sat down on the edge of the bed, and almost for the first time in her life, began to talk about her mother. Before, both of them had subconsciously avoided the subject. Molly spoke carefully, trying to remember something good about her daughter, like when she stood up for her to her father as a child. "Grandma, but she never mentioned me once," Lisa said quietly. "Not even when I was so sick with pneumonia, nor when you and I didn't have a penny of money. Your entire paycheck was stolen. Aunt Miranda bailed us out. Aunt Camille brought us all kinds of food. And this one, who is considered my mom, never even called once to just ask daughter, 'Are you alive at all?'" Molly sighed. "But it's not like I'm asking you to like her. Just get to know each other. I mean, what if something happens? What minute you need her help? I'm not forever." Lisa hugged her grandmother tightly and clung to her. She had never imagined anything worse in her life than losing her grandmother. The next Saturday, Nancy did come to visit them. Molly again took a long time to recognize Nancy's daughter was still young, but not familiar to her mother. The stiff, even defiant expression on her face made her look older. This time, the woman took her time. She brought a bottle of good champagne, sweets and fruit, and nothing for the daughter. Molly stood in the doorway of the room, watching them meet. The other Lisa girl shyly said hello. It was obvious that she perceived her mother as a complete stranger. Nancy, on the other hand, talked animatedly to her daughter, but it was felt that she was playing to the audience and wanted to please Lisa. But she wasn't succeeding. Molly set the table and called everyone to tea, and Lisa huddled in the corner of the sofa and did not utter a word and was tempted by the beautiful cakes that her mother had brought. She sat there and didn't say a word, and then said she would go to her room to do her homework. Forgot a lot of things, and it is impossible to waste time. When the girl came out and asked her mother, "Your work, did you turn her against me?" "Yes." "What did you have to do?" "She didn't want to talk to you because it was the first time you came to her after all these years. We lived without you. We had our troubles, our joys. You didn't care. The girl doesn't even know to your face what you expected from her. What kind of love?" The mother, no matter how you look at it, is still alone and slammed her palm on the table. "And I had my own life to arrange or not. Would it be good if she saw me crying and unhappy all the time? Or someone like you, who has achieved nothing in life? What have you accomplished?" Molly's voice sounded tired. "Share it. It's been a long time since we've heard from you." But I stammered. And then she said with a challenge, "William did come to me. Abandoned his madam, despite all her wealth." Wow. Molly said it because she had to say something. She didn't really care. "How did you do it?" "I gave him 2 more boys. My youngest is a yearling. William always wanted a son, and it was a double dream come true, and I made sure his mom found out. After that, there was nothing left for her. How could I give him a divorce? It's true he didn't get much in the division of property. How little? It would be a lot of money for you, but compared to what he had before, it's tears. So we had to start from scratch. We didn't move into a new apartment right away. Now things are slowly falling into place. So you decided to look at Lisa. Your William remembers that he has not only sons, but also a daughter. William earns the money. I take care of the kids. It's your generation that has all this sentimentality in its blood. What we care about is that the children are healthy and well provided for. I don't know how Lisa's going to get on in life. You've raised her to be so quiet and so uptight. She'll probably have to see a psychologist to sort it out." Oh, wait. You and Molly's counselor had an unexpected thought. Lisa is about to finish school. She studies well, but now you have to pay for everything. Maybe I'll insure my daughter, if anything. Pay for school." Nancy shut up right away. Molly put her in her place. If she showed up at her daughter's house after such a long absence, she would feel immensely guilty, would do everything she could for Lisa, would take off her last shirt. "We'll see," the mother said dryly, realizing that she would confine herself to that one word. Molly recalled an incident when in the entranceway neighbor alcoholic, who long ago left the family, suddenly also decided to visit the daughter. "I have already turned 18 years old, and my ex-wife reproached that you, Serezha, with empty hands. At least buy a gold chain for your daughter. That's how many bottles I need to stay hydrated." Serezha was sincerely horrified. And the hunting is not the same. But apparently, also frightened by the prospect of spending on Lisa, and she wasn't going to do it. When Nancy decided to come and visit them, Molly's greatest fear was that she'd decide to take Lisa in. Her granddaughter had become her grandmother's raison d'etre, and Molly didn't believe that Lisa would do well with her mother. If she had remembered her daughter at least once in a while, she had cut Lisa out of her life for many years, and suddenly she came back for more. But I don't think she ever thought of taking Lisa in. After her unfortunate visit, she didn't let on for a few weeks. Then she suddenly called again, just as she had the first time, and invited Lisa to her anniversary party. The girl was confused and did not know what to say. "And these at least let there be some thread of relationship with your mother," whispered Molly. "All right. Tell me the address, please," said Lisa to her mother. She still couldn't get on a first-name basis with her mother. Molly would not tell her friends about the anniversary. Camille might have understood her, but Miranda would definitely be against it. She felt they should be cut out of her life until she showed up to apologize. On the appointed day, Lisa wore her prettiest dress, bought a bouquet of flowers, and had no money for an expensive gift. And the cheap one she felt would both offend and poison her. Molly did not expect her granddaughter to return so quickly. But in 2 o'clock the girl was already at home crying and as in water lowered. That day the grandmother did not question her. It was clear that the evening had not gone well. The next day Lisa told her everything herself. The anniversary was celebrated in a restaurant. Lisa felt completely superfluous at the party. Her mother only greeted her casually and paid no more attention to her. It felt like her family was her husband and sons. They sat together at the table, and Lisa at the very end of the hall with the other guests. The girl knew no one spoke to her. And when she slipped quietly out of the room, hardly anyone noticed. "Well, so be it." Molly stroked the crying girl's hair. "We lived without her, without your mother, and we'll live without her. But don't be upset." Lisa tried to pull herself together. "I'm like a daughter to you, aren't I? I'll study. I'll earn money. I'll take real care of you. I'll buy you anything you want." Lisa did not set herself impossible tasks, did not penny about the fate of Tanya, make her a millionaire's wife, and did not allow her to enter somewhere in MGIMO or Moscow State University. The girl quite decently graduated from school and celebrated with friends' graduation party. She was given a dress by her godmother Kelly. And then literally the day after graduation, Lisa took the documents to the library college. The girl entered the budgetary department, studied diligently, received a red diploma. She got a job in the city library. Molly was ready to live with her granddaughter and always had nothing better to do. And yet it bothered her that Lisa had no personal life at all. The girl was by no means a gray mouse, as Nancy characterized her attractive, outwardly kindly smiling. Lisa found her way to the readers' hearts. Someone invariably lingered to chat with her, to learn about book news. But the girl never had a young man. And when Molly once again saw with her friends, she said she would live to see Lisa well settled. Not in terms of riches, it is a matter of tenth, but just that she has a kind and caring husband. Then there would be no fear of dying. Miranda silently showed her friend her fist, saying, "Shut up about the funeral again." Camille had an idea. "Listen, I have an old friend who has a son. It's an exceptional family. If I had a daughter, I wouldn't wish a different life for her. Her husband is a journalist who graduated from the Moscow Institute. A talented, enthusiastic man. It's possible to disobey him. His wife is a librarian. Can you imagine the names of the interns? Parents were from old Bolsheviks, who were for communism all over the world, amazingly intelligent family, and the only son is a future doctor, almost the same age as your Lisa. A little older than her and also a boy. His whole life goes between the library and home. Let's get acquainted. Maybe we like each other. Come on. Molly caught on to the idea. She didn't see anything wrong with it. After all, in the old days, that's how parents used to match their children. They'd find out in advance if the groom was a good match. They'd introduce them. But suddenly Lisa took the news in stride. Grandma matches dogs and cats. In the newspaper or on the website advertisement, say, an experienced groom invites brides. You should have asked me first if I wanted to get acquainted that way. But you can always refuse. Molly was confused. Talk to the young man. You will not like the new time. Goodbye. Well, nobody's gonna fire me, but I'll come to the meetings as a potential bride. Hello, I'm looking for a fiancé. Maybe you'd be a good fit for the role. Lisa was tearing up for a while, and it didn't sound like me at all. But then she thought and said, I don't know much about the intern, but Friedrich is obviously a really nice man. It's uncomfortable to give relatives a turn away. So be it. I'll meet this guy, and then we'll see. Camille gave detailed instructions. The young man's name was Noah, but the last name and middle name could be omitted. 2 days later at 6 o'clock in the evening, he would be waiting for her in Central Park by the fountain. For some reason, it was easy for Lisa to get ready for this meeting. Well, it happens. Sometimes everything goes wrong in the fate of exactly stick in the wheels, and sometimes, on the contrary, events develop as if on oil. This time Lisa was in a wonderful mood. She wore her favorite dress, simple. It seemed to be made of blue lace, although it was actually an inexpensive fabric. And Lisa felt like a real beauty that day. And the makeup was just right on her face, and her mood was wonderful. She came to the park early and liked very much the little cafe at the entrance. Together with her friends, she had already run here more than once to buy unusually delicious ice cream. And now she took a chocolate one and sat down on a bench by the fountain. So what? Even if it's going to be about holier-than-thou grandma and her friends, they're so funny and cute. Tonight she would tell them how the meeting went, if it even took place at this time. She saw an attractive man. He walked towards her and then sat down on the bench next to her. Lisa liked him very much from the story Aunt Camille had told her. She realized that this Noah was the Noah she should be introduced to. As they say nowadays, a nerd. Well, that is, he is a shy, quiet young man who was more interested in science than anything else. But this man gave the impression of a confident man, and he looked more like a movie character than a humble student. Noah, she asked, clarifying. The man smiled. Yes, Jacob, we've met, he said. I thought I had seen you before, too. Jacob was very easy to talk to. They chatted casually about this and that. Jacob marveled that Lisa worked in the library. Oh my goodness, it's so lovely. 19th century. A beautiful woman with a scythe who lives in the realm of books. When I was a kid, I fell in love with the librarian. True, she was already old, but she always left me books of fairy tales. I, too, always loved fairy tales and did not cry if they turned out to be sad. How much I felt sorry for the Little Mermaid and Anderson. The conversation moved from one topic to another. Jacob told me in such an interesting way what the city used to be like that she no longer remembered. They found common acquaintances among the teachers. Engrossed in the conversation, the young people did not notice how the sky frowned. They came to their senses only when a heavy rain fell. Holding hands, they ran to the nearest store to wait out the downpour inside. But it didn't look like it was going to end anytime soon. So Jacob suggested they stop by his place and have coffee. He also bought champagne. Although Lisa said that the last time she had drunk anything stronger than lemonade was at the high school graduation party, the girl didn't know what was happening to her. Sure, Noah was very attractive in appearance, but unless there was some kind of chemistry between a man and a woman, nothing much would happen. They chatted sweetly, smiled at each other, and parted ways. And then Lisa realized that she couldn't take her eyes away, paying attention to his every word. And when his hand touches hers, she simply loses her mind. Lisa almost didn't remember the apartment where Noah had taken her. They were talking again, drinking champagne. The girl's head was spinning. And when the young man embraced her, it was impossible to break away. She only sighed deeply and sweetly, threw her arms around his neck, and put her lips, which no one had ever kissed before. In the morning, she woke up first with her wine and in front of her grandmother, who probably already thought that Lisa had had an accident, since she didn't come home for the night. But it was Molly's grandmother and her friends who decided to introduce her to Noah, and the young man came to the meeting expecting to see the girl who could become his bride. Jacob was still asleep, and Lisa decided to run home and tell her grandmother that she was okay. Quickly getting dressed, she saw Maitha's jacket tossed carelessly on the back of a chair. The edge of a passport was sticking out of the reward pocket. Lisa couldn't help herself. She took out the documents, unfolded it. Jesus. Ivanovsky Noah. Married, registered in St. Petersburg. That's a completely different person. What had she done? Moments later, Lisa was gone from the apartment. She ran home crying and fell into her grandmother Molly's arms and burst into tears. I'm such an idiot. She just realized she didn't understand anything. Camille called. Noah said he waited for you in the park for a long time and stood there until it started to rain. But you never showed up, so you changed your mind about meeting him. Where were you? Can you tell me? Lisa never lied to her grandmother, but now she wrote that she hadn't met Noah. She was very upset, so she ran to her friend's house to seek comfort, and it started raining. And they just chatted and fell asleep. I realize it was my fault. It happened again. Lisa started to find out the details of the failed meeting. They called Camille, and Camille called her friends. As it turned out, Noah was waiting for Lisa in the park near the City Palace of Culture near the new fountain. And the girl went to another park, which was also in the city center. Young people preferred it. There were rides, cafes, a fountain in the form of an eagle. At other times, it would have been possible to laugh at the confusion. But Lisa was not laughing now. For the first time, Lisa had not been able to find a place for herself, immersed in her own thoughts. Often, when her grandmother asked her something, she would not say anything or would not answer. In addition, in just a few days, Lisa had lost a lot of weight. Molly thought it was all due to the disappointment Lisa was experiencing from a bad date. She called Camille and asked her to arrange a date for the young people again. This time, everything went well. Lisa met the young man near the local history museum, which in the town of Swampscott, Noah, turned out to be just as she had imagined it to be. A medium-sized, skinny young man with glasses. He was clearly embarrassed as he handed the girl the flowers. She had to strike up a conversation herself. It was clear that Noah had read a lot. He was interesting to talk to, but Lisa was the only one who couldn't fool herself. She was not in love with Noah, especially since this time she had something to compare it to. But the girl dutifully went on a date to hurt the young man. By refusing, she was uncomfortable. Lisa also met Noah's family. Her parents really charmed her. And when Noah, blushing and stammering, made Lisa a proposal, she thought and said yes. The girl felt she could really fit in with this family, to take her comfortable, cozy place here. But these days, when a happy bride is supposed to prepare for the wedding, to look for a dress, shoes, to agree with the hairdresser about the hairstyle, everything went to pieces. Inexperienced Lisa did not immediately realize that something was wrong with her. She complained to her friend, and the latter, hiding a smile, advised to go to a gynecologist. And there was an explanation. Lisa was pregnant. Are you going to give birth or have an abortion? asked the old doctor. I don't know. I'm getting married soon. For my girlfriend Eva, it means giving birth. Good, now I will put you on the register and write a referral to neuro specialists. But Lisa now clearly realized there would be no wedding. She couldn't lie and tell Noah that it was his child, and it hadn't occurred to her to do so. On the contrary, she was going to tell her fiancé what she really felt. She doesn't love him for real. She had recently made a mistake, and now it was her duty to raise and nurture the baby that would be born to her. But the first person she broke the news to was her grandmother. The kindest grandma Molly was not to be feared. But starting the conversation, Lisa was scared out of her shattered dreams. The older woman had embarrassed her in front of her friends, and the last thing she expected was the firmness her grandmother had shown. She sat in silence for a while, nodding her fingers at the couple in the chair. And then she said firmly, "It's all right that the wedding is upset. In the old days, it used to happen that brides ran away from the crown. Well, what happened, I will always you, and most importantly, the child you will not forgive yourself. If you always put your own interests first, we'll grow up your baby. Don't worry." Lisa hugged Molly's grandmother tightly, and she stroked her head like a little girl. There was no need to explain anything to Camille and Miranda. Grandma took it upon herself. Little Kelly came into the world without any complications. Molly had called and not out of restraint told the one that she had become a grandmother. And of course, Lisa never got married, Nancy said wryly. It just so happened that she didn't. Molly's voice was calm. But why are you telling me this? Or do you think I owe my granddaughter something? Don't even think about it with Lisa. And you've lost her. She's in bed with who knows who. So you're gonna have to deal with this baby on your own. Molly didn't hang up the phone, but rather dropped it. It looked like old age was on hold. Now she had a great-grandchild to raise. You can't rely on the kindness of your friends forever. Besides, they had their own problems. Camille's health was failing. Years of hard work had taken their toll. Miranda urged her to go to a sanitarium, but the woman refused. Kelly and Mason's son, according to his grandmother, was growing up to be a real goofball. And Camille was going to take him away for the summer. He's always freaking out at his parents' house. Kelly and her husband are going abroad. They left James money to pay the rent, and he used it to buy a cell phone. That's how they were raised. Wanted to earn more money, and her husband repair expensive to make a new car to buy a new car. So they came home late at night. And how do you work? So, naturally, you fall down and fall asleep. There was no sharing. Missed the guy, but I still loved my grandmother. And Camille cherished the hope that over the long summer vacation, she at least a little, but to re-educate her grandson, taught him to responsibility. Miranda bought a summer house. I'm really old now, she said firmly to her friends. But why? So young people buy plots of land. Young parents take their children there. They put a swimming pool and swings. Camille objected. Of course, it is not to potatoes, but everyone is drawn to nature, regardless of age. The thing is, I used to hate it all. My mother had a dacha, as there was for me no scarier execution Egyptian than to go there instead of the beach movie, and cave disappeared into these beds to collect currants and splash in the potatoes from the Colorado potato beetle. And now you won't believe it. Girls, in the spring there was still snow lying, and I dreamed. The cottage is small, but the forest is nearby. Land a little bit, but the house in 2 floors simple, but I will repair it, and I will sit in evenings on the warm grass to watch the sun go down. Eat strawberries that I grew myself, and that means I'm drawn to the land. My grandmother had a saying that old age draws you to the earth. By the way, you've got nothing left since Lisa was little. You must have given away all your things to the furniture, said Miranda. Gave it to the girls. To whom? Molly confessed. Unfamiliar woman kopeck extra to the birth of a child was not. I see found in family who will give you a free crib, stroller, and playpen. Miranda seemed to think so. But that's a lot of money. It's in my stroller. Do you know how much it costs? It's a baton of kindness. Don't even think about paying for it when your Kelly grows up. If there's anything to give to other people, will you give it to other people? How else are we supposed to live if we don't help each other? Camille didn't say a word. A few days later, Lisa brought Lisa a solid transfer. Emily was sent by your godmother after all. It's Kelly's birthday present from her to both of you. Lisa felt better. She thought she'd ruined her life, but the support of the older women assured her that nothing was irreparable. It is necessary just not to piss, not to shed tears at night, and to find joy in what is now. And Lisa became attached to her daughter. As a young mother, she sometimes made mistakes. She put her baby on too lightly and catch a cold or feed her something wrong. The anxiety she felt for her daughter, especially when she was sick, and Lisa helped her. Understand Kelly had become more precious to her than anyone else in the world. Now about that Noah who had become her first love. She remembered quietly, and her grandmother eventually found out everything as it turned out. Lisa even gave her the address. So there's no way we could meet him by chance, she said. This Jacob lives in Street Petersburg, and he was brought here quite by chance. Countries can be a joke of fate. Molly rested, but she remembered the address. And once, when she was walking with little Kelly, with her friends, she asked them to turn to this house. They even sat in the recreation yard and chatting their own. Molly answered that the house is an old Khrushchevka, and near that very entrance sit grandmothers, and they are known to know everything in the world. And a few days later she came here, alone, settled down next to the old ladies, and started a conversation that seemed to be far from the topic she was interested in. They discussed the rising prices of medicines, tomato varieties, recipes for cooking, low pensions and queues at the polyclinic. And when the old ladies became distrustful of Molly, she easily asked them about Noah, and she got all the information she needed. As soon as she mentioned a tall, handsome young man, she got all the answers. That's Noah. Yes, his parents, and he used to live here. But the kid was just a kid when his dad got promoted. The whole family moved to Peter. But now he's learned himself. He comes here on business trips to visit Wendy and Sebastian, stays in apartment 8. They're old friends of his parents. What kind of person is he? Careful, Molly asked. He's a nice guy, polite. He doesn't listen to loud music. You know what the walls are like. And there are young people who don't know the law. All night long, ready to turn on friends, doesn't drive. They say he's just unlucky with his wife. For Molly, it was another clue. She perfectly understood Lisa, who did not want to destroy someone else's family. But if Noah was a decent man, maybe he would be willing to help his daughter a little. The next day was a day off, and Molly was not without timidity when she rang the doorbell of the apartment number 8. She was prepared to be thrown out. Wouldn't believe her story. Just in case, she took a picture of Kelly with her. The girl didn't look much like Lisa. Different hair and eye color. Different facial features, too. There's a reason they say boys look like their mothers and girls like their fathers. I can't say it enough. In Alexandra Ivanovna. At first, the couple mistook her for one of those elderly women who goes to the apartments to talk to the residents about God. And then she asked her straight out, "Do you know Noah's exact address? My granddaughter had a baby girl with him, and he doesn't know about it. You want to blackmail Noah with some baby?" asked Sebastian. "Of course, you won't find out anything from us. Noah is married and lives far away from here." Wait, Wendy stopped her husband. "He stayed with us for a long time when he last came on a business trip. And this happened then." Molly nodded and pulled out a picture of her great-granddaughter. God, they look so much alike. If I met a little girl like that on the street, I wouldn't doubt for a second that it was movie day daughter. What about Adriana? Sebastian asked. Is it still bliss to be with a wife like Adriana? Noah just had an affair and didn't go looking for rope and soap. I'll write down his address now. Wendy cut him off. Maybe you shouldn't, continued her husband's resistance. And what if now every month we'll get calls from genteel old ladies to Noah's house to register more and more children? But Wendy, don't listen. He went out and in a minute brought Molly a piece of paper with God, she said. And back home, That same evening, Molly secretly wrote a short letter to her granddaughter. She informed her that she was the grandmother of the same granddaughter that Noah had met in the park. She explained that the granddaughter had expected to see another person of the very person she was going to be married to. But it turned out to be what it turned out to be. Molly also wrote about Kelly's birth. "We're not going to impose on you." She wrote it out letter by letter. "We don't want to blackmail or claim anything. But you should know that you have a daughter. And if it's your goodwill, you can take part in her upbringing. She's a sweet girl and very much like you." Noah Ivanovsky worked far from home. If the car was in repair, he had to get up at 5 o'clock to catch the first bus. He would come back when Good Night Kids was on TV, and he only had one day off on Sundays. Noah's only dream was to get a good night's sleep. He wanted not to be in a hurry, not to owe anyone anything, to watch one after another, and then to get up leisurely, make strong coffee and feed the cat, whom Noah considered the main friend in the family, and to do household chores. And in the evening, maybe there would be enough time for his favorite hobby. Noah used to make model ships. But lately Noah did not know peace and thought that apparently he would have to choose between the asylum and expulsion behind the barbed wire, and on a very bad article. The whole problem was the wife of the once beloved. Noah for a very long time sincerely considered her the one and only clever, beautiful, who is unevenly breathing. The whole male world. Adriana's behavior has always assured others that she is special. When a woman is so in love with herself, it is infectious. She can do anything, smile, be cute, charming, or come with a majestic look. But that very degree of self-confidence surrounds her with a special aura. Men are weaker in spirit. They break first. Women mostly treated Adriana negatively angry and did not understand the reasons for her popularity. She opened the door and stepped outside. The guard had long since fallen asleep in the booth. All she had to do was not to wake him. Hojali tried to open the door. No luck. It was locked. The guard must have the key somewhere. With quiet steps, she crept to his booth, opened the door, and saw the keys hanging on a nail. This is it. Just don't wake him up. Do it quietly. Without stepping on the chip clip, she reached for the keys from the threshold, but accidentally stumbled back. A sharp sound, boards creaking, echoed throughout the booth. What? Who's there? The guard jumped up. But Miranda had time to hide behind the wall. He waited until he was asleep again. She reached for the keys again, and this time it was successful. Finding the right key, she locked the guard in his own booth and opened the gate. Not 10 minutes later, she dragged all the canisters to the entrance of the main building. Gasoline poured out onto. It dripped down the stairs, down the walls, and even sometimes from the ceiling. Gasoline was from everywhere. Every meter was at least somewhat flooded with gasoline. She poured gasoline on the grass, and on the street too, to make that one ignite too, making it difficult to get out of the main entrance. The lighter caught fire. A small flame developed in the wind. That small flame could do great destruction, and it did. The lighter fell to the ground. The gasoline immediately began to ignite in a chain wave. In a moment, the whole building was ablaze. The heating inside hadn't been turned off yet, so everything was burning perfectly. It didn't end there. Ran to the shed where the gardeners left their tools. She easily retrieved a metal rake from there. Once she got to the children's ward, she broke the bars on the window with difficulty and great effort, starting to scream and bang the ships on the iron. It woke up generally everyone inside, but the nurses and some of the children ran away at the noise. Run away from here. Run away from here. The gates are open. Can you run? Screaming at the top of her voice, she, trying to give them hope. The educated children started climbing out of the windows. Some ran to wake their comrades. The nurses tried to restrain them, but the stronger ones just pushed them away, and the old women fell to the floor. When they realized the hopelessness of their attempts, every child found themselves outside and, banding together, ran after Miranda toward the exit. The main building was already all ablaze. Crowds of employees and patients found themselves outside. Some climbed onto the roof. Some put bars on the windows and jumped from the second and third floors, breaking their legs. Hojuli ran headlong and shouted to everyone that the exit was free. The crowds immediately rushed to the small gate, pushing each other. There was a crush, but no one was hurt. The guard tried unsuccessfully to break down the door. Then he grabbed a chair and broke the window, jumping out and trying to stop everyone. A wave of people just swept him out of the way. It was too late to do anything. You should have thought about safety earlier. Miranda didn't see her mother in the crowd and thought she could have accomplished her task. Her mom should have been suffocated by the smoke. That would be better for her, for Miranda thought death was better than such a miserable, insignificant life. John had lost the most important thing in her life, inner freedom. It was unlikely she would want to live with her own mind as a prisoner after such a thing. Or rather, what was left of it. Miranda didn't try to hide after committing her revenge. She simply went to her dormitory and fell into a peaceful, satisfied sleep. She was already taken to the station in the morning. 13 people died from the fire, and several dozen more had severe injuries. She was sentenced to the death penalty, which had not yet been abolished in their country at that. The next day, getting off the train, he took a cab and for a long time afterwards stood near the entrance, unable to take a single step. Finally, Noah found the strength to climb the stairs, find the right apartment and call, holding his breath. His grandmother, Molly, opened the door. He immediately realized that she was the woman with hair so blonde it didn't even show that it was graying. Her blue eyes looked at him affectionately. She was right to resent him for doing this to her granddaughter. But she said, "Only come in. Lisa and Kelly have gone for a walk and should be back soon. You didn't tell them I was coming." Molly shook her head. "Do you know how mad she would have been at me? I was stammering already that it would be a good idea to find you, to tell her about Kelly. But she strictly forbade it. Said you had a family. And what happened was all her fault. It wasn't her fault. For God's sake, she didn't leave an address or a phone number. I didn't know her last name or her year of birth. Otherwise, I never would have. Do you believe me? I believe you. You set up the room, and I'll put the tea on." To keep the guest entertained, she brought some family photo albums. And Noah forgot all about the world. Yes, Kelly looked just like him. But Lisa had been wonderful as a child, too. If his parents hadn't moved away, they might have met a long time ago. And then Noah and Molly were having tea, and the older woman had already told him in detail how the 3 restless girlfriends had acted as step-girlfriends. So much for ruining a good guy's life for his family. And most importantly, Lisa sadly told Molly, "But we'll see about that. Thank you for finding me, for not hiding the whole story. Now I understand a lot about broken lives." But then they both heard the door in the hallway open, and a child's voice sounded. Molly made a sign to Noah to stay put and be quiet. "And we have guests." With these words, she came out to meet Lisa. "What kind? I have to put Kelly to bed now. We have no one here. Or did something happen?" Molly took her by the hand and led her into the room, as if to change her. Noah jumped up, so they stood there looking at each other. Grandma quietly shut the door behind her. By the time Noah's vacation at his own expense was over, the decision had already been made. He would file for divorce, leave Adriana the apartment, and return to the town where he had lived in his distant childhood. Once the marriage is dissolved, Noah and Lisa get married, and he's ready to put the girl in his name now. Molly had never seen her granddaughter so happy. Lisa was flying down the street, and passers-by were looking at her. She seemed to be surrounded by a halo of joy. Did you notice that? Little Kelly quickly got used to her father, and he was very fond of her. Molly was still away from home a lot. She stayed with Miranda and Camille to give the young family some time apart. "My friends were shocked, and I didn't believe in the lottery," Camille said. "I never bought a ticket. I thought it was a scam." Turns out there are much bigger miracles in life. Noah divorced Adriana, although the young woman protested as much as she could. At first she thought it wasn't serious, that her husband was just upset about something. Adriana still spoke to him in a condescending tone, but Noah acted decisively and quickly learned the ins and outs of the divorce, quit his job. And that's when Adriana became alarmed. Noah was surprised to learn how much she had come to cherish her husband. Adriana promised to behave very differently, vowed to learn domestic duties. Her selflessness extended to the point that she was willing to leave Peter with her husband for the city of his choice. She took few things, but not because she didn't want to bring much with her, but because she had almost nothing. When her grandmother had fallen ill, all her pension had gone to food and medicine, and she hadn't bought anything for herself for a long time. She took her bag and went wherever her eyes took her, just to warm up a little. It was the third 24 hours of Lisa's wandering around the city. She was terribly hungry. She hadn't slept well. She was cold all the time and had only one thing on her mind. What was she going to do now? Realizing that she could do nothing without money, she sat down on a bench and cried bitterly. Charles left the office and looked around. He had to go to the bank, but he couldn't get the thought out of his head that his son was home alone and that they hadn't found a nanny for him. He was on his way to his car when he heard sobs. He turned around and saw a girl crying. Apparently, something had happened to her. He wanted to keep walking, but something stopped him. He went up to her and asked her, "Did something happen to you? Did someone hurt you?" Lisa looked up at him and answered, "All my money was stolen, and I can't go home. I didn't get into college. I failed my exams, and now I don't know what to do. Do you want to earn some money?" Lisa gave him a frightened look and shook her head. "You misunderstand me. I have a disabled son, and he needs to be looked after all the time. He will have a lot of fun with you because he is an inquisitive and intelligent boy. I will pay you well for this, and you will not need anything. I'm just warning you that he's lying a lot, and quite possibly, you haven't been with us long. Still, I think it's worth a try. Besides, if you don't succeed, I'll give you the money anyway, and you can go home." Lisa wiped her tears and looked at the man more carefully. She recognized him immediately. "My name is Charles, and yours?" "Liza. But as Lisa, don't you agree?" Lisa remembered what Adriana had told her about Charles and that his son was disabled. She realized that she would soon see her brother, even if only by his father, but still. The first thing Charles did when he brought Lisa home was to show her her room, and then he looked at her and said that she should probably start her duties tomorrow because she looked very sore and tired. "Now I'll get a doctor to see you, in case you're sick, and then I can't let you see my son. Then our cook will feed you, and you lie down to rest. And tomorrow I'll introduce you to my son. I'll introduce you to my son tomorrow." After the doctor left her, Lisa showed her bag and put her passport on the bedside table. A photograph. Then a woman came in and put a whole tray of delicious food in front of her and left. Lisa ate and immediately lay down on her bed and fell asleep. "So, you didn't even look at her passport." James was surprised when Charles told him everything. "You surprise me. I know there are plenty of con artists out there. And you bring the wrong person into your house. Yeah, she's young. She's still a little scared of the world. Well, I'll get my passport tomorrow and ask Rick to find out all about this girl." Early in the morning, before going to Lisa's, Charles went to the cook and asked her what she thought of the girl. "Oh, Charles, poor girl, she must not have eaten or rested for a long time. As soon as she ate, she fell asleep. So sound asleep that she didn't even hear me pick up the tray of plates and leftovers." Charles nodded and headed for Lisa's room. He knocked, but no one answered.